We're just natural. Act natural.
But the light is
Oh, is it? Oh, yeah.
that color is
Better?
Yeah.
Thank you. Just check our time. So good afternoon, everyone. How are you? Getting a little bit tired now, or no? Okay, lots of energy. Great. So I'd like to start, if I may, and I have a colleague who spoke already this morning, Professor Anne Gallagher, is going to assist me as well, as she is editor-in-chief of the Journal of Nursing Ethics. So she'll be here now in a moment. But what I would like to start with, if I may, is to ask each of you your name, your job, your role, your experience in writing for publication, and what you would like to get out of this hour and a half. Will I say all that again? The job, experience in writing, what you'd like to get out of this, and anything else you'd like to say. Maybe I'll start down the back. They may not be awake, I'm not sure. Let's just check. What's your name?
Okay, hello. I am Fatma Al Abdullah. I am working in maternity hospital since 1995, mean 30 years. I am 30. Going to, they will tell me bye-bye. Okay, I am working in maternity hospital. I have experience in OT 16 years, ICU 4 years, and casualty 3.5 years. I work also with the neonatal department 3 years nearly as a staff nurse, all this. And now I am assistant nursing director. And I am very interested with the research because I am preparing my research about how the vital signs it will affect the patient condition, especially the blood pressure and the respiratory type of blood pressure relate our maternity case.
Excellent, thank you, Fatma. With a lot of experience, well done. And you haven't written anything in the journal, you haven't published?
Yeah, I published.
Well, okay, 2 times.
2 times. One published during Corona.
Yeah.
How the Corona affect the nurse attitude during Corona. This already published. I work with this research with my college, Dr. Mona Ashimari. And also the second one about the health teaching, how to teach the patient after out of the hospital after discharge. And also in Kuwait, we don't have OPD or clinic for health teaching the patient after discharge. And this also, it was poster research. I already also, we attend in our nursing conference before the Corona, it was 2020. And also it was published.
Great. And was Mona involved in the second paper as well?
About the poster, it was the time I was graduating from the college. And the second one, it was also 2021.
And any problems publishing, any issues, any stories, short ones?
No.
Was it all good?
No. It was teamwork between Ministry of Health and the college. I feel it was interesting topic. And that time also, I never faced only that, administration paper that to approve this paper with so many signatures. Only that.
Only that. Well done. Thank you so much, Fatma. Thank you. What's your name?
My name is Rim Sata.
Rimsita.
Sata. Yes, I'm new nurse in maternity hospital with Fatma. I have been working 3 months and now I'm new staff.
Yeah, great.
Yeah, I want to know more about ICU. I'm interested in the speakers here. So yeah, I just want to gain some knowledge.
Great, thank you, Ms. Sata. You haven't published?
No.
And your name?
My name is Sahar Ahmed. I'm an assistant director of nursing in Adan Hospital, and for time being, I'm in nursing administration.
Wow, big job. Any writing experience, or what would you like today? Did you publish any papers?
No,
No. And
But
today,
I had shared in the in-service education inside the
In-service.
hospital
So-
when I was there.
ideas for your staff
Yes.
to publish. Brilliant, great. Who do we have here?
I'm Ahmed Matar from Jara Hospital. I have 14 years experience between ICU and CCU. Fortunately, I haven't published anything yet, but hopefully, inshallah.
I like that optimism, it's wonderful. And today you'd like to know more about that.
Yes.
Thank you, Ahmed.
I'm Mohammed Hassan. I'm a nurse staff in Mubarak Kabir ICU. 10 years experience, 2 in Egypt, so 8 years here in Kuwait.
Excellent.
Yeah.
And today, what would you like?
Today, we got good information regarding critical care in ICU.
And have you thought about publishing, writing?
No,
No, not even on the radar, because you're busy with work
that's the future.
in the future. Well done. What's
I'm
your name?
Dalia Said.
But-
Dalia
Dalia. Yeah.
from Mubarak Hospital, ICU.
Yeah.
I'm working in Kuwait since 2008
Yeah.
in ICU. Today I'm very interested about all lecture, especially second lecture.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, about hemodynamics.
Very detailed
Yes,
for
it
you.
was
Yeah.
very nice.
For your work. Yeah. And publish, no.
No.
No. Great, thanks, Ms. Dalia.
Thank you.
Ala Adnan, I'm the head nurse of surgical ICU, Mubarak Hospital. Working on the service for 16 years so far in Kuwait, 5 out of Kuwait, between Jordan and England, from where I got my master degree. I'm a critical care nurse, a nursing practitioner also. Actually, the latest published research, it was a group work, it was not my own. That was on 2019.
Good.
That's it. That was the last project that we worked on. Before, I worked with some research work on the organ transplant among brain death patients from ICU. That was my main project previously.
Yeah.
We worked in between also on casualty projects like improving the quality of care on our casualty, our hospital. That was earlier again, before 2019, not the latest one, 2019.
19, was that organ transplant?
No, that was the bronchial asthma research related topics regarding the education of the patients and related to improve the quality of care and the outcome post OBD follow-up. That was mainly the topic at the time. I'm definitely interested to get an update, refreshing.
Yes. Yeah. And what was your
Regarding the
experience?
latest guidelines.
Apologies. What was your experience like of the publishing? Positive, any challenges?
Yeah, definitely. It's tough because some changes is there always, and it depends on the journal that you're trying to meet the criteria to be published in, as you know.
Yeah.
It depends on the countries, depends on the journal itself with the requirement of approval, and that's it. So it would be nice to get them exposed for the update,
Yeah.
definitely.
Thank you, that's wonderful. Thank you so much. Maybe I'll continue with you.
Yeah, my name is Dr. Hanan Safar. I'm from College of Nursing. My experience, I worked when I was BSN in open heart surgery in ICU for 5 years, and then I graduated from US, Ohio, on gynecology, acute care nursing, and then oncology and critical care. The thing I was thinking when I graduated, tertiary student, so once I reached Kuwait, I started publishing, I started doing research. But when I came here, the reality shock, it was so busy in the college,
Yeah.
so I could not even have time to
Yeah.
take a breath and think about to do it. But just I shared some as a co-author with my colleagues. The only single study that I published in 2023 is about the health-related quality of life, about what the relationship between symptom burden and uncertainty with the breast cancer Kuwaiti women. I have a lot of thought and
Yeah.
plan proposal,
Yeah.
but I didn't put it actually to work on. The issue is I don't have time.
Yeah.
So really, I need
Yeah.
to know what the steps, how to do it. And the other issue is like I have an experience in, I have funded from PATE, where the place I'm working with. But the issue, they stopped my proposal in Ministry of Health because there is some issue with the study, they don't want to involve the knowledge or the level of knowledge of the staff to use the tool which to know the knowledge of the staff because they don't want to be in dilemma how they work in this area about the pain management, especially in palliative care. So this is really, I feel shocked why. So this is my job to know the level and how we can improve and how we can bring hands-on to improve their knowledge, behavior about this palliative care. So still stopped. They rejected twice. So I want to know what to do.
And Dr. Safra, that was a research proposal, at proposal
It's a
stage.
proposal,
Yeah.
I did funded from PATE, they are agreed for, but it stopped with
Yeah.
in the Ministry of
Yeah.
Health because I can't use it. I cannot go to the palliative care and do the surveys there.
Brilliant. I'll tip into that, I think, during the session. It's really helpful. And your experiences generally positive, negative, mixed with the publication?
Positive. I'm 100% positive. Always I say there is one time I can do it.
Just do
Once
it,
I have
yeah.
the idea, I have the power to do
Yeah.
it. But I need the time and the steps that not easiest way, but the way that I can cope with what the stress I have now.
Yes. And have you any tips then for
Please.
what was it? What are your tips before I give you my
I
tips?
tried several like
Like you were successful. What were your tips for being successful? Working in a team.
working in a team, but mostly I want to bring my idea for the team and then work with the team.
Yeah.
So mostly I involve with the team, but now I have my own idea as a critical care. As now I'm at the department, I have some of my colleagues, they want to work with me for this proposal, which I have it right now.
Yeah.
But there is, I don't know what the new step I have to follow this, I can say.
Steps.
Yeah.
Great. And
Especially now in my position, we need to work on research more
Yes.
than just doing routinely
Yeah.
teaching the student and going through all this.
Yeah, absolutely. That's really helpful. I'm just going to take this lady who came in. Just your name,
Thank you.
your job, have you published, and what would you like out of this publishing workshop?
Yeah, my name is Asma.
Asma.
Al-Asmi. I am a head nurse of maternity OT in Jahra Hospital. And in fact, I want to learn about research. It's my point is interest for me, but still I am the first step.
First step.
Yeah. So I hope I will learn much about it.
That's brilliant, Asma. Thank you, Asma. So we'll hear from some gentlemen this side. What is your name?
I'm Jassim Mohammed Al Barak from Military Hospital, ICU in charge. I have master degree in critical care from Jordan University. I have so many research I did in my study and after postgraduate. As an example, I have my research knowledge, practice, and strength of care of delirium management among nurses in critical care in Kuwait hospitals. And we did also another research about the critical care team adherence to and the barrier to work evidence-based guideline for the prevention of BAR in critical care units in Kuwait hospitals.
Yeah.
And we did also knowledge practice and attitude among nurses about tracheostomy care. I work as a co-author with my friend in COVID research
Yeah.
and male and female breast examination. And we did so many projects also.
Great. And just, Dr. Mohammed, did you publish in the journals, the Middle East or the European journals, or did you publish? Still all
I'm collecting.
collecting. Okay, excellent. And anything particular you would like today?
No.
No. Gather all that collection.
No.
Yeah. Brilliant. Thank you so much. What is your name?
I'm sorry.
Sadiq Fidi. Yeah.
Well, just I would like to share my experience with research. started to have that. Since I graduated from this program, then continue to just some little of participation of research during the war. Then when I did my master's degree, we came to know that we have something to establish into it for advanced nursing practice. That we don't have to so we have to work as a team or as a nursing field to adapt this program in our associations or hospitals, because what we know that nursing, they have very limited authority to work inside the clinic. So when we go to discuss this, we have to adapt it as a regulation to establish regulations. We have a challenge to work on it. Now, whatever, like I have done the project for my master degree, I submitted it as a proposal, but there is a gap. We don't have the regulations to help you to establish a discipline.
Yeah. And your master's thesis was about advanced practice, establishing advanced practice.
Yeah. So that's why I stopped it. Then I have to work on something else until we will have, as we say, a team, and also the field itself that you can work with.
Yeah. Excellent. Really.
What we have practiced is like college in the past, they have established programs for cardiac and ICU programs to be enrolled and then to be like ICU nurse or CCU nurse. Then what we have found is no clear role in Ministry of Health for those graduated persons. So they came just to work as a nurse or as an in-charge nurse.
Yeah.
So we have to adapt regulations to adapt this role.
Yeah, really, really good. And in terms of publication, not.
Well, it was not published, but I work in different research. I participated in the CNUM system and ICU and how to connect it with the nursing role, especially in ICU.
Excellent.
When we get like as a quantitative study in the conclusion, we submit it for nursing.
Excellent. Well done. Great. Really good. Thank you so much. And remind me of your name, Fazil.
My name is Mark Lindsay. I'm working in the hospital since 2012. Head nurse for pediatric department. My experience just 2 years surgical work. After that, only 10 years in pediatric. Now in study leave, I complete BSc. Inshallah, this course I'm graduate. I hope to transfer to the ICU.
Just pronounce your name.
Anwar Al-Azizi.
Here.
I am Abbas Momin. I worked at Java Hospital in Qatar since 2021. I haven't published anything, but I wish to do so. So I hope to learn the basis and how and where to publish. That's my
Great questions. Thank you so much. We'll go down the end here now.
Hi, I'm Mira Mohammed.
And Mira
Hamad. Yeah. I'm a critical care nurse. I work directly under Dr. Ali Haddad here. I'm interested in learning about research, actually, innovations.
Yes.
Yeah. My unit is actually participated in international randomized trials. So they are like the Revise, like the Megarox, and we have a lot. Yeah, I'm interested in how to do this.
Brilliant. Thanks so much. That's really helpful.
I am Ravish Rafiq, number 1. I have experience as a nurse specialist in adult care, and now I am a clinical investigator.
I did not work in the actual research, but I'm working in one proposal about the impact of implementing nutritional nutrient checklist in improving nurses' knowledge about nutrition.
Excellent, thank you so much.
My name is Hani Al-Anzi. I joined Ministry of Health 2006 as a staff nurse. From 2015, from 2007 till 2015 as a staff nurse in main OT, general surgery. Then from 2015 as a head nurse till 2019, same as a head nurse in main OT. From 2019 to 2022 as a head nurse in cardiac OT. During the Corona pandemic, I was working in surgical department plus casualty OT plus COVID department as a head nurse, according to the shortage of head nurse, covering that area. So I got a lot experience how to deal with the crisis. The same thing, I joined here to know about the leadership, more idea about it. 2022, 2023, 2022, I became as assistant nursing director. 2023, I joined to nursing college to continue post-basic. That's it.
What type of program at the Tennessee are you doing? What type of post-basic specialty?
General.
General post-basic, yeah. Masters?
No, yes.
Yes, basic, excellent, well done. And no publication so far?
No.
Nothing at all.
This semester, inshallah, I will be graduate.
Next term.
My name is Noura Sinafi. I am working as a staff nurse in a CCU. I have experience for 3 years, and I wish to learn more about research. We studied that in college before.
Yes.
And we published only with the colleagues. So I have no experience in publishing, and I wish I would learn more. We'll do it in the future. Thank you.
My name is Hanabi Hajari. I have experience. I am a Canadian nursing graduate. Graduated from Canada since 2015 and joined the Ministry of Kuwait a year and 4 months. So far, I am an acting head nurse in the School Health Department, Ahmed region. I would like to involve more and more in the School Health Department. And we'd like to know how can I do the research and what are the steps.
Thank you so much.
My name is Idris Al-Ahmar. My experience 14 years, 13 years in Jordan in different area, in ICU and Cancer Center, master degree. I published one research about nursing agenda attitude about quality of life of failure patient. And the other research under the process regarding the neurological effect post cardiac surgery regarding the on and off pump. Just I work 2 years at clinical instructor in Jordan University.
Yeah, that's great. Just tell me, with regard to publication, what experiences did you have? Some positive challenges?
Around the publication, the review paper, not full data research or analysis, review paper.
Yeah.
The other one is longitudinal study that need around 18.
Yeah. And was it the experience positive? Or can you say?
Like longitudinal, you need too much from the volunteers and you need too much people.
A lot of people, time.
Time.
Yeah. Great, that's great. So I'm going to go over here. My colleague in chair.
Sure, my name is I'm an assistant director at Emira Hospital. I have background more than 20 years in different departments. I work in the surgical ICU on team. Now at the moment I'm in charge of more than 350 people. I'm in charge of the ICU and CCUs, both specialties in the hospital. Recently graduated with the PhD, so I'm starting to look for publications. What I'm really
Oh, for open access? Yeah.
I have to say one technique to publish one. And another question, there are so many journals online. So what the different lines and because when I publish a few of my work, I'm receiving emails from journal based on them, and everyone trying to publish in the journal. So what this confuse all complications.
Really good questions, and just remind me if I don't get to them to answer those, so don't let me go before that.
Yeah, my name is Alan Mazouk. I'm assistant director, and from clinical side, I graduated actually from Queensland University of Technology, Australia. My PhD I did in 2018, and clinical side I work in different departments, including CCU, and from the academic side, like I conducted some researches as a main author, but I classify myself as a qualitative person. I did regarding the lived experience of Kuwait nurses, about their perception, their challenges they are facing, and another research is about nationalizing the nursing workforce. As a co-author, I did with Dr. Mona Shimiri from Nursing College regarding breast cancer, the lived experience of the nurse, patient, and but unfortunately none of them, my research as a main author is published. So I need to know about the publication, how to publish these tips.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Thank you so much, Emma.
My name is Joan Duran. I'm a PhD holder from Alexandria University in Egypt. I graduated in 2016 as the first Kuwaiti who is holding the PhD. My thesis was about nursing talent, and it was the first over thesis who's talking about the talent and its relation to quality of the nurse's life. So I have many publications, around 9 like this. The last one was on AI, and it's between 4 or 5 countries. So I'm more quantitative person. I'm holding right now a position of the head of research and studies and research office in nursing department, and one of the IRB committee in the nursing who's just reviewing the paper before the final approval of the IRB committee in the ministry.
Before publication.
Before the IRB committee
Before the
approval.
ethics.
Yeah, ethics.
Yeah. Great. And any experience of writing publication that you'd like to share, positive or
Actually,
not so positive?
Positive and negative? Okay. The negative parts, we will start with that.
Okay.
The publication needs patience. You have to be patient for first time, third time, fourth time, 10th time rejection. Then it will be accepted in one of the journal. And I have publication in national and international journals. The good things that in Kuwait, actually last year, we did committees in all the hospitals for doing research. And one of the research was published, done recently, like for example, Dr. Amna, she did about Jabir Hospital, she did one paper, and she presented in our conference, which was before 2 months. And this is a great effort from the hospital. They started from the scratch, just to build themselves for doing research and
Yeah, so that was a project run and initiated by Dr. Hanan to encourage all the hospitals to conduct research.
Yeah.
And it was like competitive between hospitals, which was amazing.
Yeah, all together or
No, each
hospital is separate.
Yeah, you competed for the same research?
No.
Different idea, different
Different
research.
ideas, yeah.
different specialties.
And competitive, you mean there was a
Yes.
Who finished first?
Yeah.
Who will present first?
Oh.
Who will do it first?
Yeah. Excellent, well done, great. So, Michael.
I'm Dr. Nidhi. I'm a clinical charge nurse.
Abdullah Al-Kindi.
Abdullah, yeah.
Yes, I'm a clinical charge nurse in a community hospital. Unfortunately, I have no experience in publications.
Would you like today
Hopefully.
to learn to publish it? Right. My distinguished panel, I'll leave Anta last.
So I'm Isra here. So my area is critical case. I've got 40 publications. And I think the lessons learned is, just perseverance. If you don't, because sometimes you do get, I've never had, even with the 40 publication, I've never had a publication that was accepted as is, so that's part of the growth. So there's always a room for improvement. But I think don't give up. Just sometimes you just leave it there in the drawer for a day or two, and then you feel better, you take it out, you get a cup of coffee, you say, okay, take the first comment, you just start and you do it. Because at the end, as you say, you want the publication, and ultimately, if you've improved it, you say, okay, then you know the paper is the best you can do. But don't be discouraged by it, it's rejected. Sometimes you didn't maybe target the right journals. I think that's also something I learned, is to make sure that you target the correct journal. And we are privileged at our university, we've got a list of accredited journals because of all those predatory journals that you get. And then you publish, and then later you find that it's actually worth nothing, or that wasn't a good. So from the university side, we've got a list of accredited journals. But I think that is the other important thing, is to always make sure that you target the correct journal, and that you speak to the audience for who you're going to present that specific findings.
Yeah, excellent tips. Thank you so much.
Hi, Kathleen Bowman. Done it, publication, got a bunch of them. Not my favorite thing to do, I'll just put it out there. I was sharing with her that every single one of my publications, except for one, have been presentations before their publications. And I love doing that. So I get all the research, everything that you would put in an article. And because I can't stand a white piece of computer, or it used to be a white piece of paper, I talk into the computer. And I give my presentation into the computer. Then I wordsmith it, then I plug the references in, and I have myself an article.
Fantastic.
And I have done research as well.
Fantastic tips. And I had told you just before you arrived, Professor Gallagher, I introduced you as editor-in-chief of the Journal of Nursing Ethics, so that you were my sort of co-facilitator here this afternoon as well. So I think, so whatever way you would like to introduce yourself.
Yeah, that's fine. I'm an editor, I've been a reviewer, I'm also an author, and I can also say I've had rejections. Right. So I always say be very tenacious, keep on, and be very resilient. And when you get the rejection, put it away, but then bounce back and then work it up for another journal. But the key thing is sending it to the right journal. You need to read the guidelines from the journal.
And I think
That's all.
just maybe one other advice I can give is that you have to plan time in your diary to write. Because it takes time to publish, like state, and to get the research you have to do. But I've seen if you don't allocate yourself time in your diary that I'm going to do this or I'm going to work on this, then if you see it 3 months, 6 months, a year, then you haven't published. So it's all of you, like you have to have a specific effort and allocate time for yourself to work on the publication or to do your research or edit it so that you have like a plan.
Excellent, that's a really good point. Excellent, thank you so much. So today, thank you for sharing all of those experiences. They're really informative and helpful for what I'm about to say. So I would like to speak about writing excellent manuscripts, but taking the perspective of the reviewers and the editors. And the reviewers, for those of you who haven't published, when you prepare your manuscript and submit it to the journal, the first person usually you meet is the editor-in-chief, like myself and Anne. And we, at the moment anyway, there is a facility for us to determine whether we will reject, desk reject, we often call that, immediately, or send for review. And the review is usually 2 or more of your peers, we call it peer review, who establish the the benefit or otherwise of your publication when you publish. They look at standard and they're often given prompts. At the moment, many journals, it's anonymous, double-blind peer review, so you don't know them and they don't know you. That's changing. And essentially, these reviewers come back to the editor with advice, and then the editor makes the final decisions. I'll speak a little bit more about that as I go along, because it's sometimes not that straightforward. But what I would say to you is that the reviewer's perspective is very, very interesting. So in terms of the aim then, I'm Editor-in-Chief of Public Health Nursing, and I'm also Associate Editor, Journal of Advanced Nursing, and I was previously Editor-in-Chief of Journal of Nursing Management. So I'm coming to this workshop from an experience base, like an apprenticeship. I was reading the other day about management and leadership in a book about organisational management, and they were basically saying that unlike other things like your critical care and intensive care skills, management is something you actually learn as you go along and get better and better at it as you manage it. And certainly there isn't any degree or qualification in nursing publication. I have learned through trial and error that the hard way. So, but it's a good perspective to come from, because I've been in all of the perspectives that you're in. I've been author, researcher, editor, reviewer, so I have a 360 perspective. So in particular focusing on the public health nursing journal, the Journal of Advanced Nursing, and Nursing in Critical Care today, because they do differ. So I hope that you'll gain a greater understanding of the writing, how to write excellent manuscripts from this perspective of reviewers. I'm not speaking too fast, am I?
No.
No, I'm not speaking too slow?
No.
No, it's okay. And I hope that we can establish a way forward for a successful publication. I know Dr. Ahmed there was very positive, and so was Dr. Mohammed. We're going to do this, so I like the idea of the success. And as I said, a particular focus on the Journal of Advanced Nursing and Public Health Nursing. So I'm going to quote Roger Watson, Professor Roger Watson. Some of you may know he was previously editor of Journal of Advanced Nursing. He's now editor-in-chief of Nurse Education and Practice. And he's written a book, a writing publication for Karen Holland, which I would recommend for you. And he's given a lot of tips from his own experience. And one of which, as you mentioned, thank you, my colleagues here, that actually one surprise he got at a conference was someone came up to him and said, I didn't know editors were ever rejected, you know. So even that, somehow we think it's a secret, there's a secret sauce to success. And as somebody who's confident or takes more time, gets successful, simply somebody who is more tenacious, more perseveres, keeps going under 10 rejections. So I'm the same. I've almost, I don't think ever been accepted outright. And I'm continuing to write, and I'm continuing to be rejected. And that's not to be negative. We're going to focus now on how we avoid that in a moment. But I would say about Roger Watson, I'm just going to read, he has a small podcast, and just speak a little bit about the perspective of an editor-in-chief. And this whole idea of desk reject. So when you present your work, the first person who sees it is the editor. Now, he's going to say here, like most editor-in-chiefs of large volume journals, this is what he does. When he gets in, Dr. Ahad's paper, Dr. Ahmad, she worked really hard this PhD, really excited about getting in the paper to Roger Watson. And what does he do with it? So he says, essentially, he has a cursory look, a quick look at the content, the abstract, the format. How long do you think he spends looking at that? Few minutes? Hours?
5 seconds.
5 seconds? Pardon? One view. One view, like a swipe, yeah. And I was surprised at this, because like that in a workshop, one of my own colleagues from university was, excuse me, I assumed there was like a student that you were reading through each page and checking through, maybe 40 minutes, maybe an hour. Roger Watson professes to 2 minutes. 2 minutes. You were right. 2 minutes. Or maybe flick. Who knows? Now, we don't say myself and Anne how much time we spend, it might be hours, but I can say that Professor Roger Watson most certainly only spends 2 minutes. So if you've only got 2 minutes to show your wonderful work from your studies, what do you need to do in those 2 minutes, if that's what we're aiming for? Now, what is he saying? Back to your point, Dr. Kutza-Grinzo, the fit of the paper with the journal. I think Professor Hamad Hannah, you had said this as well, pick your journal. When you're under the type of pressure that Dr. Hannah, nearly 2,000 students, you're only 20 faculty, you know, put time in your diary to publish. Make time, but you need to target those journals. If you waste time with the wrong journals, you're going to end up with rejection. And it's so exhausting. As you said, been through 10, you prepare your paper, you get it ready, and so on, and it's exhausting. So he checks firstly, does it fit with the scope of the journal? I think you mentioned it, Dr. Hannah, that each journal has their specific aims and scope and what they want, and it's what we need to fit it. Title, short and descriptive. Just on a side note, we're moving, well, certainly my journals, or the journals I'm involved with, very much towards titles that are informative, like a mixed method study of nurses' knowledge of catheter care. So a little bit of the sample, a little bit about the aim of the study, and a little bit about the methodology. This sort of spaceships and aliens, nurses' experiences of, you know, sometimes people put weird and wonderful titles on, but if you think, apart from anything, the journals firstly want their papers to be cited. So they're not going to ever cite aliens and spaceships, and you know, they're going to cite, people are going to be searching for mixed method. They're going to be searching for ICU. They're going to be searching for advanced practice, critical care nurses. So your title needs to be retrievable, and it needs to reflect the actual study. The abstract, according to journal guidelines, and a cursory, a quick review of the specific content. And he repeats then, I don't read the manuscript in any great detail in order to make a decision. Now, one thing I will just say, and I've been kind of parking now about the format, is I would be very careful with the format of the journal. And what I mean by that is the lovely white documents that Dr. Bowman likes or dislikes, depending on the time of day. You need to have that page perfect. Now, they will say now, some of the journals I'm working with, they actually offer you free, I've forgotten the name now, basically you can have your paper in any format you want, from the University of Canada, so it was in Canada, and Australia, not Canada, and we'll fix it for you. So the bottom line is, back to the money, the journals are publishing houses making hundreds of dollars, thousands of dollars, millions of dollars. They want your work, actually. They want it. So they're trying all the time to make it easier for you. So they say, just get your Australian document, put it in here, 5,000 words, we'll sort the rest out. I would be careful with that, because to the eye of the editor-in-chief and the eye of the reviewers, it's the first thing they look at, how it looks. And I've been in journals who have free format, nursing and critical care on it, and the reviewers will come back time and time again, there's references missing, the references are in different style. We are all programmed to look, spelling, format, paragraph. So bottom line is the thing, even look at Roger Watson, we were expecting the Oracle to have this amazing insight for us, and actually it's quite simple. Format it correctly, choose your journal, and what else? He's got another thing to say now, just one moment. Doesn't work. It was working a moment ago. Oh.
Are you going down or up? It should be the bottom button. Oh, maybe the battery's dead.
Can I put it on here?
There you go.
So, Roger also gave us some insight on what type of papers are most likely to be accepted. So, back to Dr. Ahad's question, what's the secret here? And he said it's difficult to actually say. Again, back to simplicity, most papers that adhere to the guidelines fully are the ones that are most likely to be accepted. Because the guidelines, and again, unfortunately now, there is so much material available in the guidelines and journals, pages of how to submit. And we're trying to, forget that, because we're thinking of, is my work good enough? Will they like it? What will they? But actually, it's not really about that, because your work is good enough, it's robust, if it's been ethically approved or carried out in a robust way, well then it's worthy of publication in my view. It's how you shape it for that actual journal, and then have little tricky bits at the end, which, not the end, each journal has different formats, different sections. The Journal of Advanced Nursing, something like what this paper adds, what's known about the topic. Really interesting provocation at the end of the paper that you must include. But if you don't read the guidelines fully, which I don't sometimes, you don't put them in. And it just bothers the editor-in-chief, especially if it's in the format and guidelines of another journal, and you've obviously been rejected, and it's really obvious because it looks exactly like from another journal, and now it's going into your journal. So that's an issue as well. But essentially, you've got to keep that up to date because they actually change very frequently. And not only that, it's not a matter of being rejected. I don't know whether some of you've been through this as well. There's usually a first pass through the administrators. So they'll come back to you, your abstract is too long. Okay, I'll fix it. Back again, you haven't done the bullet points on what this paper adds. Okay, sorry, back again. You could go back 5 times and then be rejected. That is really, really painful. And in fact, the authors will come back to me and say, I have been submitting this, I've been revising this for the last 3 months. They weren't, they were actually going through the administrators fixing the paper. So it just, it's time consuming. If Dr. Hannon finally gets the time, says, this is precious time, I'm really going to do it. You want having the right journal in the right format. You don't want it back Monday morning. My favourite thing is submitting it on Friday, back Monday morning, rejected. That's common, I'll go back to that. Okay, so we said here are the guidelines, short titles, abstracts that follow guidance, and now this is the second bottom line after formatting and choosing your journal. The third bottom line, manuscripts that repeat old studies without producing any reasonable new information have been replicated without justification don't really appeal to us. And this is where my colleagues, I think you end up with frustration sometimes, and it's almost like running a relay race with weights around your legs because you're running and you've got weights on it. The USA, they're up there, you know. England, Britain, they're up there as well. But you're behind because, as Dr. Jaffra said, or Dr. Gedan, you haven't started advanced practice fully in the country yet. You know, you're thinking about it, it looks like a good idea, you've done your study, you're all ready to go, but there isn't the legislative framework, or there isn't a... When we get going, or maybe your ideas, Dr. Gedan, about the concerns could even be written as an editorial, you know, to these journals. This is where we're at the moment, we study did this, we're thinking about, and so on. An editorial is a short piece, maybe up to 2,000 words, 1 to 2,000, that precedes all the other publications. You know the tip from Roger Watson, the editors are always looking for, always, they can't get enough. Usually, some journals restrict who they ask, but a lot of the journals we're involved with, you could be free to write an editorial. So you could write an editorial on this very topic, and that would be possible. But when you're presenting it to the world, one has to come across in a way that you're presenting some type of reasonable new information. So it's kind of, I love, Dr. Ballman has really hit the nail on the head. That's the way to write. The way to write is to tape yourself. If you can speak, you can write. And actually speaking is the conduit of your thoughts. It's your brain, these wonderful brains we have. We've all worked in ICU. We know what happens when things don't work right. This is working to an amazing level. When things come out here, you have analysed them, thought of, you know, deciphered it, put things together. I mean, the voice is beautiful. And if you don't allow that to happen in your publications, that novelty won't come out. The new, I guess, you expressed about the advanced practice, Dr. Gedan. It was beautiful. The way you said it, it flowed. You could write an editorial right now. But somehow when we go to write then, we get stuck and start writing how we think a professor might want to write. Or, worst case scenario, which I'll come to, we start cutting phrases from other documents, cutting and pasting, which is not that. So this is an issue for us, generally speaking. We also mentioned evidence-based practice, which is really important. Somebody mentioned they had a study, Dr. Mohammed has a study on evidence-based practice, isn't it? Nurses, again, we would have a response in the USA in particular. This has been done years ago. What's new? And saying in the Middle East or in Kuwait doesn't cut the mustard for the journals. It needs to, you're always trying to sort of express novelty. So novelty is one of the bottom lines that editors look at, but even if you get past the editor, my experience of these 20 years is that the reviewers would typically look for novelty. But back to your point about the payment, I mean, a lot of the journals we're working with are non-paid journals, so that some of the journals, open access, are kind of, some part of their approach is to take those papers that maybe aren't and give them an airing. So they make money, it's a win-win for everybody. My experience in the open journals is they're still looking for novelty. So you're not really out to win, you're out to pay money. The trick really is to try and present the novelty. It is new because, and there are always new perspectives to be had. Just a point on your question about the journals, and it's a whole other conversation that really couldn't be had today, but essentially there are a group of journals that are known as potentially predatory. There's a whole legal discussion, you can't even really say potentially predatory. The guy who was a librarian who kept the list gave up the list because he was getting legal threats, and you know, it's a very tricky situation, but for you to know there are journals that are not, they vary from absolutely fraudulent to the other end of things, okay, but they just don't comply with the guidelines, so they don't have an editorial board, they don't have this, they don't have that, and most of them are paid open access paid journals. So I watched that. There's a thing called the Directory of Open Access Journals, DOAJ, and if you want to know if they emailed you, are you legitimate, check the Directory of Open Access Journals, and then you know it's a legitimate journal. I actually had an experience recently with my colleague from Greece. A journal published a paper on violence with my name and his name and 5 other names, and we never wrote the paper. And they had only started, but they back issued 2 years of small number of articles. They put Deborah Jackson for the Journal of Advanced Nursing on the editorial board, and it was totally fraudulent, predatory, and it was a small job, but I had to involve the university legal and ethics, and to get it taken down. Then they retracted it. There's not a retraction. I didn't write it. Take it off. So there are bad people out there. Okay, so why do reviewers reject? Just keep an eye on the time. That's really quick. Let's go over it. I can actually write the reviewers' feedback for you right now because they're actually nearly all the same. Doesn't fit in the journal's aims and scope. Outdated literature. Limited search period. Unclear methodology. Problems with logical flow of arguments, discussion repeats findings or no new information, limited application beyond the specific context, and the limitations not included. So, I should have names there, so I thought I'd wipe them out. That's basically to show you that the funny thing is about the reviewers is they can actually vary quite a lot. It's not uncommon to have a reject except minor revision and major revision from 4 reviewers. I almost never ever see them agree. And you need to be careful with that because you want to try your best to have the reviewer be quite positive about you. So that there's a couple of categories. One is accept, no changes, which almost never happens. The next one is minor revisions. Next is major revisions, and then reject. And these days, mostly reject with transfer. And if you are making a lot of errors, they will mostly lean towards a negative. They either lean towards major or go towards the reject. So you try to keep people positive by following all of the tips I'm going to give, and then you will hopefully have a good outcome. Now what's interesting, I find it with the reviewers as well, see this thing here, look, reject. The reviewer actually said, I would reject this manuscript pending some significant rewrites. And I find this very commonly in the journals I work with, is that the reviewers write reject, but they actually mean revision. So I don't know whether it's a language thing or whether they mean reject it right now. And the problem sometimes is the editors are working so fast, they don't even see it. Yeah. And I actually said it to Deborah Jackson. I said, they're not reading the decisions. She said, they're not reading the papers, they're not reading the decisions. So it's just a small thing. I mean, that was me. You can appeal the decision as well. It's worth noting that. You can appeal to the editor-in-chief. My experience of that is it's almost, as an author, never successful. People will not back down on their decisions.
I wanted to ask the 2 editors. Because I serve as a reviewer for a number of journals, I tend to like to put my comments directly in the document, anonymous. Things where they missed a reference, done this, versus making a list on a separate sheet.
Yeah.
How is that viewed by the editor?
We love it.
You guys are okay with it? All right.
Yeah. And actually, reviewers work very hard. They often get really detailed reviews. But sometimes, sometimes what you see is pages, maybe written or annotated, lots and lots of changes, and a language that suggests a revision, and then you reject it by the editor. So if you're in that position, I would be trying to appeal it and say, well, actually, the reviewer seems quite positive. I just want to bearing in mind that very often once they've made their decision, they won't go back, and they tend not to have independent reviews. If it was me, I would always give the person another chance and bring it back in again, have it re-reviewed. So just to say to you, it's not an exact science, but it's a bit like the students. It's up to you to make sure that you've done everything possible to make their job as easy as possible. So this is just a couple of slides for all editors who've published with their case from the editor's perspective, what the common reasons for rejection are, and they're the same. Not the right journal, nothing new, lacks evidence, poorly written, doesn't follow guidelines. So that's essentially, and I just want to say one more thing to you here. This is Pearson. I know they're a little bit dated, but they're quite important points. The interpretation of the findings. The whole section there of unsupported conclusions, inflated findings, conclusions disproportionate to the results. So this is just an important thing that I'll mention to you in terms of the limitations, and that is that on the one hand we want you to say this is so important, this is novel, this is what's new about this. What this adds is, although advanced practice has been developed in the West for so many years, this novel perspective of intermediate brings this about. So you want to be really boasting about the novelty, but you have to pull right back with the uncritical acceptance of the facts. You're going to say, however, this was 6 nurses, and not simply the qualitative was really more creative, a little bit of a conversation. Is it, back to your point, Dr. Bowman, presenting is a perfect way of publishing. Because if you were in a room here and you wanted to explain that your study was amazing, and you wanted to put someone said, oh, what about you'd be able to pull back? You'd say, well, yes, you're correct. It was mostly in class. It was more, so you'd have that conversation normally. So same thing in your article. Make sure that you don't overinflate the findings. And you will see this in other people's papers. You'll see it time and time again that people in the discussion conclusion will overinflate. With regard to research and science, we're always trying to prove absolutely that this is the case. But with healthcare and applied research, you can never do that, because you're dealing with small samples, you're dealing with humans, so there's always huge limitations. And I think I see that again and again and again, and viewers are quite critical of that. A rehash of established facts, just that's an English word we use quite frequently in English, not so much maybe in other languages, but just giving you the same old. And you don't write about evidence-based practice, you don't write about advanced practice, and you get a copy of all the stuff. You mentioned Miss Kerr earlier on your lovely presentation. You get Kalish's talk, you get there's all about, you actually, I know when I see a paper that's been copied, bit by bit from Kalish. You saw Miss Kerr, say something different. Go to Dr. Bowman, get the recorder out and let's just say it your own way, if you know what I mean. So that rehash, I'll come back to that in a moment. So, I'm going to go through very quickly each of the points. Formatting, I'm not going to discuss because it's quite obvious and straightforward, but do that according to the journal guidelines. So, in terms of fatal flaws, one of the items that was mentioned there by the editor, fatal flaws or ethics or authenticity, any problem like that with the manuscript would be probably solved together by the editor in chief and not get into the peer review phase. If it goes any further, it could lead to rejection. Things like fraudulent behaviour, duplication. You should only submit to one journal at one time, and when you publish in one journal, ultimately you give them the copyright unless you get permission to publish elsewhere. So we're not really talking about serious issues here today, but good practice guidelines can be found on the Committee of Publication Ethics Guidelines, and that's really useful. That's what that looks like. And I'll come back to another issue with that in a moment. Doesn't fit with the journal's aims and scope, the most common reason for rejection from the editor's perspective, and the reviewers themselves pick that up, as you've noticed. So one of your jobs is to carefully check the journal's aim and scope and fit your paper to suit this. So it either fits already or you fit it to suit the aims and scope. And read manuscripts from the source journal to make sure not only that you're looking at the style of writing, that you're engaging with the ideas in that journal. And this is a really important thing, because when we're writing for the world, we're writing to add novelty, there is no world in the sense that you can put your finger and tap into. There only is the world of that journal, such a few journals. But there's so many million publications, it's essential to know exactly. But one mark of that is, okay, I'm in the Journal of Advanced Nursing, I want to write about advanced practice, what has gone on before? So that you can engage with that discussion in that journal. Does that make sense? Gives you a sort of proxy measure of what's going on, that you can add to. It's probably likely to be reflective of the majority of the literature. And the second point about that is the editor-in-chief is the person who reads your work, so they've read everything that's come, generally speaking. Karen Holland was editor-in-chief of Nurse Education and Practice for 20-25 years. She knows immediately whether something is new or whether it's because she's had everything else. That's her world, if that makes sense. So make sure, and I have a little email that you hear, is it? That's the aims and scope. You can see them in every journal. Even the language alone is very important for you. A journal that's very fundamental to you, and I notice that one or two of you in the room, I know Ms. Fatma, who published with Dr. Mona, who's one of the main publishers here out of, including yourself, Dr. Hanan, and yourselves. There hasn't been a huge amount of publications from Kuwait, and I'll speak about that when I'm speaking on Tuesday. And this is one of the core journals for yourselves in practice and in research that would be very, very useful. There hasn't been a publication from Kuwait so far, and it's probably for all the reasons we mentioned before. But that's their aims and scope, which is really interesting. And what is interesting too, when you're looking at a journal, you're trying to get into the feel of the conversation by looking at the most recent papers, the most cited, and the most downloaded. So what's the topic? Sometimes in order to revitalise your topic and discuss something new, you might need to add on to the natural conversations that are going on in the journal, whether that's miscare or leadership or bullying or environment. And it's what you do in natural life. If you're having a conversation with somebody about the research that you did, you wouldn't just walk in and start going, I did a PhD, the aim of the study was to, you would actually sort of say, what did you do? Oh, I did that too, it's really interesting. It would be this conversation, is that right? So back to your point about the readers, the audience, Dr. Benson mentioned to us, the publication is an imaginary conversation. It's imaginary, and writing is an imaginary conversation with your reader. And who's your reader in this case? Or who's the audience actually, more than readers? Your editor, your editor-in-chief, your editorial board, your readers, they're your and where is that journal based? Now it's changing a little bit, but if your journal is Australia, Australian Journal of Advanced Nursing, published on Friday, rejected Monday. That's not what happens in spirituality in Australia. Okay. Sometimes the journals are kind of based in the USA, for example. A lot of the main USA journals, 60-80% of their papers from the USA. You know, there is a sort of, and it's not a sort of prejudice thing. It's actually, you've got to get into the conversation. Because I've actually been in England, which is quite close to Ireland, on a conference scientific committee looking at abstracts, and some abstracts I didn't understand what they're about because it's so much about the local. So when you're writing for global, you're writing for this audience and where they're positioned, what type of people they are, countries in a way. You know, for example, if you're writing for a US journal about advanced practice, you would have to have some conversation with what type of advanced practice they have in that country.
I'm going to put a plug in here. The World Federation of Critical Care Nurses has a journal. We're about a year and a half away from going for Impact Factor. We just have new editors, so it's a really exciting time. We take people who haven't published a lot and assist them in that journey, so it's something to think about.
Well done, Dr. Bowman. Reminds me to become, not too much, but obviously you all, becoming a reviewer is really helpful as well, because you get used to the experience of reviewing, you get used to seeing new papers, new journals. If it was me, I would choose one or two journals to, you know, like all of you are intensive critical care specialists, I would choose one. I mean, I've worked for nursing critical care, and it's the one journal that we do for
You love it. Yeah, I published it as well. Yeah.
So pick your journal, because you said you get emails every day. Do you want to review? You know, if you want to do that, that's fine. That's about that journal there as well, and that's their aims and scope to promote excellence of care and critical patients by specialist nurses and their professional colleagues, internationally and disciplinary forum, and so on. So it does show you they want to hear from those of you who are practitioners as well, the innovations some of you mentioned, things that you're doing. We have a couple of issues with that. One in terms of maybe ethics, case studies are less likely. I don't think journalists think about publishing case studies, is it? No.
I think we have, but we're really looking for research, going after the impact factor.
Yeah. So just to say, I want to just show you, this is a letter to me with rejection. I'm sorry to let you know, unfortunately, the submission does not engage adequately with the history of ideas published in the Target Journal and a wide degree of disability. So Again, this is my experience in the 4 or 5 journals I'm involved with, and I've 240 publications, 11 books. It's my experience of writing for others that you have to engage with this material in those journals. And I had engaged, by the way. I don't know how I'd taken the time eventually in my spare time to do it, and it didn't work, essentially. But it isn't explicit from the editor-in-chief's perspective that this is what's needed, but certainly there's some part there that, you know, so if you take your advanced practice or innovation or suctioning, the attitudes and so on, and just plonk them into a US or Australian or UK journal, it'll just be like a fish out of water. It just won't fit, if that makes sense. So you're picking your journal, but then you're fitting very nicely. Watch this. This is a real giveaway. First line, miscare 2012, you miscare 2015. All the references end 10 years ago, 5 years. If they all end about 10 years ago, they probably relied very heavily on another literature review. They haven't essentially written authentically, if you like. Or the PhD and Masters finished 2 years ago and all the references. Now, that doesn't mean to say you can't put old references in, but you have to, there's 2 issues here. The first issue is the reviewers, time and time again, they've got this imaginary year. Does anybody know how many years they expect your literature to be in the last 5? See, science.
But it drives me nuts though,
I know.
because there is fundamental science out there that, I'm sorry, nobody's going to repeat this study because it is the study, and it was published in 2013. I'm not going to do a review article unless it's a systematic review. I'm going to go back to the original research.
But Dr. Mullin, you tell them that, put
I
it in
did.
tape and yourself. We're having your conversations, and it sounds wonderful. That's exactly what you need to do. If you're including Patricia Brenner, foundational in relation to novice, you have that conversation, contextualise the data. You don't even need to say it though, don't apologise. You know, assemble the work of excellent, relevant, explained, contextualised, had it on. Unfortunately, and I can tell you this for hundreds, I see 2,000 papers a year, hundreds and hundreds of papers. Miscare is terrible in nursing, Kalish 2012. Advanced nurse practitioner, actually the worst one ever is advanced nurse practitioners are going to be the future of nursing. 2009. So that doesn't even make sense in English. What you need to say was back then someone's, this is where you got to tape. You didn't say that. You said, oh, this guy, don't even want them. You know, I didn't like what they said actually. They were really critical of advanced practice in the Middle East. No, or you'd write that. So it's this discerning about the dates, really. Just be careful. And the other thing to be very careful of is literature review dates as well. If you cut off, which a lot of students cut off, their searches for 5 years or 10 years, that tends to cause problems in publications because they expect the whole database and a narrow scope of search. They don't expect nursing, advanced practice, and ICU 5 years. Why? You know, what happened 5 years ago that makes you think you have body knowledge and body science in the next 5 years? Unless you can say, pardon? Yeah, so say for example, Kalish first in miscare 2012, the first ever miscare, let's do it for 2012. Or if you maybe a push if you want to say when you first started with critical care nursing practice specialism with a man in Kuwait around 2018, if you wanted to Kuwait and critical care, maybe. But there needs to be a reason and a rationale for that. It was after the Ministry of Health's policy on. But just be careful because the reviews are so much work. You get to that point and you get to the reviewers and they want more than 5 years. It's really, really common. Just be careful. Nothing new. Okay, so lack of originality, limited contribution to this body of knowledge. And I love this. This is from Nursing and Critical Care. And it explains what novelty is. Creative analysis of existing knowledge that demonstrates new insights and understandings of practice. So Dr. Baldwin has disappeared for a moment, but that's what she was explaining when she was her slides and she's talking. She's able to think and work out, well, actually, this is really interesting for practice because we started advanced practice, we discovered that people felt lacking of confidence, we needed to do, someone mentioned the education program, that's all interesting. But repeating their attitudes to Catholic care, you know, this has been done 7 times in the States, and we did it again, and we found Catholic, that doesn't really cut the mustard, that makes sense. So we have to be creative with even if the work is repeated from other countries, it's fine, or you're adding in that way, try and have your discussion and conclusion. So for me in the articles, the study is the study. So whether that's a systematic literature review, a literature review, or original qualitative or quantitative study, it's what you do. That is what it is. You shorten it, you have ethics, you have methodology, you know, your findings more or less as is. The only tip I would give about that section is don't repeat the findings in the text and tables. It's one or the other. And don't repeat it in your discussion. Your discussion is not more stats, more quotes. Your discussion is a discussion. So that there is your sort of study, how you did it, what you found, but that introduction, background, discussion, conclusion, that's where you're free to say things. That's where you can have the conversation. What this adds is, and that's why the journal has some prompt to it. This helps us to understand the intensity of critical care nurses' experience in relation to this, and it could be helpful for global colleagues to understand and do it more about this. So you have that creativity in the discussion. And nursing critical care then as well, so if you're saying the claim is completely new, make sure the significant evidence the claim is new or original. So first time in Kuwait doesn't work. You just saying it's for the best of our knowledge, it is the first time, it doesn't work either. Those of you who have taken PhDs, you understand this a little bit more, although it can still be tricky when publishing. So engage with ideas and conversations in the journal, the most downloaded, the most cited, the most recent, will help you think about and generate new ideas and understand areas where you can add in relation to that. And this is an email, real email, names changed, from the International Nurse Editors Associations, about 130 members, myself and Anne are involved. And the email one was really, it's one of those email groups really helpful, always coming up with tips or whatever else, but I nearly had to lie down after this, basically. This person said, I'm curious, do you receive many submissions from the international community? About 10 years ago, I added a few scholars from Great Britain, Australia, and other areas. I now an editorial board members from several very reputable international universities, and get a steady stream of submissions and manuscripts that do very well in the review process. Do you have any contacts abroad? Have you had any visiting scholars? I mean, it's like something out of Mars. No, but we received a significant number of international manuscripts, mainly from Asia, Brazil, Turkey, and Iran. Unfortunately, many of the papers describe studies that we may have done in the States years ago, so there's no research. And I brought over, I think, three, maybe four, online editors from US journals, and they very kindly did workshops for me, for my staff. And like one of the first questions when I met them, I said, "Did you publish outside the US?" Almost not, no. If you look at the stats in Scopus, a lot of the journals are publishing, largely speaking, US, International Journal of Nursing Studies, and they have 38 countries. But again, largely English-speaking, mostly US, Canada, Australia, UK, and the Netherlands. The Nordic countries very fluent in English, and they also PhD by publications, so it's quite active. But again, it's not anything to do with a sort of a prejudice, prejudging. It's to do with how the impact of a novelty is understood in the US perspective. So almost there now. A rehash of well-known facts. So rather than talk about plagiarism or talk about copying, just to say to you, some of you work with students or you've been in the BSN course and you know that within your Word document and your PDF, there's a system that tells you when you've copied from articles, and that is your books. Plagiarism, turn it in. So if you're a student in my universities, you can have maybe 30%, 28%, that's okay. Pardon? 28. So it's okay, that's allowed. The journals, most of the journals I'm working with have the same software. Now we're talking about Roger Watson's 2 minutes, and we're looking at, basically all they do is look at the number. Yeah, they look at the number, and they will reject. If they see 60% gone, they see 100% gone. They don't actually do the investigation that, I know that from experience, being an author. They don't look into, well, you actually published a presentation online, after I had published something, conference, PowerPoint. One of my colleagues in a workshop in Ireland had a thesis, a PhD thesis online, and they were rejected from the journal outright. And they won't entertain any conversation. Oh, by the way, I'd like to appeal this. No, sorry, can't. I have been rejected, a big team from Trinity College Dublin. They had a published report, not copyrighted, rejected. Yeah. So they don't look. So you just, and what you do with that is you write to the electrical editor, tell them my PhD is on Bournemouth University, I published at a conference here and there, and it's not, and it's a preprint. Preprints are also problematic. Preprints are not reviewed, but your work is there. and some journals will reject you on that basis. So if you have any other material out there, let them know. But the bigger issue for me is cut and paste writing. So when I was working for Journal Nursing Management, at one point I got about 2,000 papers a year, but half of them were in this situation, which is this. Now that's blurring deliberately. And basically, that's a quote. That's cut from another journal. That's cut from another journal. You see what they've done? There's some words, their own words. So that's what we think paraphrasing is. Take a quote from the journal, fix a few words, put it back into your essay. Student, 28% plagiarism doesn't matter too much. It matters a lot in the journals because they're not accepted. I've actually had papers back for my own work, it's 6%. And the worst thing is, they won't tell you where the plagiarism is. It's like finding a needle in a haystack. How do you find it if you haven't shown this? Some of them, it's not routine. Not routine. So there's another one. So I was getting these, hundreds, because everything is leadership is great man, clearly, all copied from the leadership. There's another one. Now, the worst thing as well is when you do this, the professor's on the team, the professor comes back, excuse me, they are our own words. There's not many ways we can say things. We did not copy. If you did, look like you did. Most of the people don't agree with it. They don't accept it. And what happens is this rehash, students, undergraduates, get into the habit of copying these in bits from the end of journals. There's another issue as well, that these bits are generally very broad. Advanced practice needs to change the whole world. And if you take them out of that, they're out of context. You put 2 or 3 of them together in 2 or 3 different articles, you've got a very, very unusual writing style, and actually often doesn't make any sense whatsoever. And if you take a line here from this article, the conditions healthcare professionals encounter in primary care exist in a life context and must be viewed as part of a life story. That's what you mean. What do you mean? You take that as a. So just be careful with that. How do we give time? Just have a quick look. I want you to be the editors, and I want you to look at this. If you don't, we're pretending it's a full article. We're Roger Watson. We'll have a quick look at the title, quick look at the bit of the background, and just a flavour of what's going on in the paper. It's not totally anything, but just what's your instinct immediately? What's your reaction? Would you send this peer review? Just have a read for 2 minutes, and then I'll ask you. What do you think? Would you send it for peer review? Don't be afraid to tell the truth. Would you send it for peer review? A lot of experience.
Actually, the article always starts with the word of nursing.
Yes.
It's not, I will not understand the sentence. If it's nursing, she should, or he should, or the authors, they should change the words. I will not start with the same rhythm. It will give a weakness to the paragraph.
Yes.
The methods is having so many things inside the methods. It's only 3 small sentences or even 6 words or 7 words. The finding without numbers and percentages, findings. It's a findings. This is 2-3 lines with words. It's not a time.
Excellent. Really good point about the nursing. That's really good. And the abstract is beginning to irritate us. Isn't what do you think? Style. You don't like the spaces. Yeah.
What's the conclusion? Keywords missing here. That's not.
Oh, absolutely. Very good. Excellent.
What should be the design? Okay.
Excellent. And you see the way you mentioned there about the format, the bothering spelling, yeah, spaces, that really bothers the, when you look at it, you go, oh, I don't know. And the other thing as well is, like you said, the repeat of these sentences. What are you trying to say? What's new here? Yeah. So I wouldn't. So generally, if we're looking for, and the thing is, if that was we get used to being students. If that was your student essay, the marker would look at it. It's 50%, 65%. We're used to that. Publishing is 100%. Can't put in work then it's maybe 50, 60. It doesn't look right. We don't like it. It doesn't go any further. So, and we're looking at novelty. Well, no, these are basic points. And these are the sort of mistakes people make with these statements just listed without any thinking or critical thinking or analysing or creative analysis, as you said earlier on. So, unclear methodology, you mentioned there, it's not clear. Often you've got this cut and paste writing, or maybe writing like your thesis, very static, very academic. It needs to be shorter, it needs to be concise, it needs to be clear. Aim to write clearly and freely, and just problems with logical flow then or arguments. Aim to write logically and clearly, avoid the cut and paste writing, and try to write using plain English. I keep going back to Dr. Vollmann's idea of the speaking, and it's so important because a few slides now, I don't need to read them, but there is this notional plain English campaign in the United States and the United Kingdom asking people to campaign against my favourite word, gobbledygook. Gobbledygook is nonsense. So if you're cutting and pasting, or if you're trying to write like a professor, a lot of time you're writing nonsense. Just write it simply, clearly, avoid the pompous writing, and just write. Almost finished now, just to say the limited application beyond the specific context, which is links to novelty. So it doesn't really apply to us much beyond creative, much beyond the Middle East. So the solutions there is you think about the application beyond your specific context. What could this possibly mean? Move it from your thesis, move it from your project. What could this possibly mean to that imaginary reader? And include these details in your manuscript in a logical way supported by evidence. Use your own words to develop these points about how your study findings apply beyond the specific context. Be confident and free to move beyond the original discussion and conclusion of a research report. You need a new discussion that implies more globally. And ensure you carefully explain and manage the context of your research. This is often the secret to success. The background instruction will really clearly explain where it is in relation to ICU, CCU, and advanced practice. What's happening in your study and in your discussion, and then out. Why this is, as I mentioned earlier, maybe not new across Europe or the States. We have important findings from the study that could help you with further developing advanced practice and pushing forward in these practice. So it's your thoughts, your discussion, your conversation. The study, the really good study that you're all doing here for the hospital, the same in Ireland, same in the States, same everywhere, that's for that particular context, that particular purpose. The hospital were delighted, the ministry were delighted, everyone was delighted. Now you're doing it for something else, for a different conversation. So back to Dr. Vollmann's point about presentation, when you're presenting, you don't speak to this group as if they were the hospital managers. You know that we're among colleagues from ICU and CCU, and we adapt our conversation accordingly. Actually, this is really interesting. This is an email I got from an author as editor. Thank you for your note. We will revise and send the article elsewhere as it's important to have a tool to indicate whatever the hospital beds. I'm sorry to have sent our manuscript to a journal with mainly American reviewers that should have gone elsewhere. I think this person wasn't rejected. They were actually offered a revision, but they were so upset they didn't want to. And they said, I believe nurse managers are bright and capable people, and they can determine the meaning and relevance of the findings. So basically, they were really cross that the reviewers were saying, please, in your discussion, tell us what this means for Christian care in other parts of the world. He said, well, a nurse can read. They can surely read that and interpret themselves what that British ICU has to add here. But that's not the purpose. The reader shouldn't have to do extra thinking. You should do that for them. This is, you don't need to read this at all, but just a Chinese colleague, lovely email explaining, thank you for you got a revision. The reviewers mentioned the background. And following these valuable suggestions, we've rewritten the background, and we hope the background section shows you, when you turn to me, go down the back, provides international readers with a clearer context of the current status of midwifery in China. The reviewers gave a very good tip. Look, we like your study, we like what you're doing. can you tell us why? What's going on in China that you do, rather than just the attitudes of midwives to oxytocin, same old, same old. We've done it in the States years ago. What's going on in China that makes this so important? And this just to show you, this blue here, these are all the changes that were made. She got permission to do this. Over the past 3 decades, China has improved. Fabulous. So you tell the story in your background, and that helps everyone. And finally, more or less, limitations not included. You need to include them, even if there isn't a section on it. Make sure they're realistic and relevant. Like I mentioned earlier on, the overinflation of the findings is a problem. And the limitations relate to how much we can believe your work is the truth as such. So keep this understanding in your mind. How we say this is the truth. Truly, every nurse's attitudes to evidence-based practice are as follows. Not really when you've only got 350 grading nurses. So you're always thinking about this. What was different about your sample, what was different about your data collection. Don't do too static. Don't do the limitations of the study are qualitative. I'll just show you an example from a recent feedback I got, and they found it to be deficient. Fiona Timmins, after 25 years of writing, it was deficient. Deficient. While there's a discussion, we'd like to see more about the limitations, because these are crucial for understanding the scope and applicability of the study. And then I did that. I made them up out of my own head here, all in head. So you just have to be more creative, more responsive. Limited interpretation, very common for discussion to read findings. And that can happen when you do a thesis, when you're doing a report for the hospital. Be fairly basic, fairly banal, if you like, and it isn't what the journals are looking for. And especially the most frustrating one is in your findings, 90% of the sample were nurses. First line of the discussion, or female. First line of the discussion, 90% of the sample were female. That's irrelevant. Most nurses are female. That's their start. It's nothing to do with the attitudes to, unless it has something to do with the attitudes to COVID. And then say that. So it's surprising that the females in this study were more likely to. So just be careful. Don't overinflate the findings. Discuss key findings only in a prioritised way. So the most startling finding, the most important finding.
According to what you say, this is topic figure equate or separate between
these topics. Which topic? Oh, any topic. Any topic. Every topic. Actually, as I said, there's nothing new since Aristotle. Yeah, I mean, artificial intelligence, I think they have published on that. I mean, there is one thing, pick new topics, or dig into, I don't believe any, I think all the research you've mentioned here today is important. People don't, and I mean, ICU, CCU patients, surgical patients are physically the same the world over. So if you're seeing problems or challenges and you need solutions, surely there's something for you to bring us colleagues. You know, just because it's been done, and unless there isn't a reason for the research in the first place, and you can look at systematic review for the answer. So if you're doing original research, there usually is a very good reason for it. And I think it's just about explaining your own context and the reason for it, the research problem, why you did it, what you found, how this can be useful to you. If you're having dinner with colleagues from ICU, you'll be able to say, oh, this is really interesting, what you need to do now is bring the families in. You know, there's always learning. So I think it's about positioning your work to show those creative insights. I think that's the most important thing. The one thing I would say to you is it was Miss Rena Satter mentioned about the government and the ethics. I lost it now. Dr. Hannah Safar, the government not agreeing or ministry not agreeing the way forward for your publication or your research. So I mean, it is something just, I can't comment on it specifically, but I would say we do have to be mindful from an ethics perspective, and Professor Gallagher is an expert on that, in terms of my view in any case is that the work should do people no harm. So if in a way, and I can understand caution of the ministry, if something's going to expose, and you've got a junior researcher with a small number of nurses and discovers that half of them don't wash their hands, the Kuwaiti ministry don't want that to be out in the global world. And I'm not just saying Kuwait, Ireland, anywhere. So I think there's a balance because you have to have truth as well, and maybe it's something for you in the university or the colleges and in your practice to actually have those discussions about safeguards for the ministry. Because I believe as well, I mean, in poor results, I mean, there was another issue in the journals that only positive results were published in the past and poor results weren't. So there is a place for negative results, but that could also harm patients. When you're in the maternity section, there's suddenly discover that there's a very higher rate of fetal mortality in this unit compared to anywhere else in the world, and that's damaging. So I think, again, it's a couple of things maybe to understand that there is an ethics, but then it shouldn't drive your research. If you have valid research questions, I really think it should be something that would be useful going forward. But at the same time, I think we need to be mindful to be protective of our participants and of the authorities that are there, and what way the country could be portrayed, because you have a lot of freedom in articles. So I think that the idea of an article being read by the ministries is something that they would have the final eye just to see that actually this thing isn't being encouraged to distribute. And some of that will be around limitations, like how the position will work. Okay, so the discussion then is often key to success. So says Roger Watson. Discuss your findings in relation to your research questions, include your limitations, don't overstate the findings, and make sure that you have good policy implications. Finished. Just to say, give you just these quick flashes of a paper that I did myself. This is the amount of changes that I had to do from the person's thesis, which I really liked. That's the word I took out of the thesis. All the red is the adaptations for a nurse education journal. And the reason for that is, again, just to show you that you have a situation where you have a methods person who had a master's thesis about nursing students' experience of death and dying, patients dying, and I had an interest in that for my own work, and from listening to the person, it sounded fantastic. When I read his thesis, I really, really enjoyed it. It was really good, really high level, and in fact, but it was based in Ireland. It was very much the Irish context, very much a lot of the sort of. So this is why, in fact, again, that the data, the findings, that did not change. But the conversation I had with the audience, and back to your point as well, student nurses' reaction to death and dying is not really not at all. It could have fallen with the final verdict. So we're writing in a way that's trying to sort of, what we link it on to burnout, COVID, financial, you're trying to have a modern conversation. You don't, if that makes sense. So basically, I agree with Dr. Safar, it is such hard work. The final message I would give that it actually takes me to put a master's ready for publication is about 2 weeks full-time work for me, 80 hours, and I'm 25 years writing. It is huge. Each revision, congratulations on 10, they take so much time. I mean, the preparation for the journal takes a lot of time, and the revision, that's another project as well. So you do need time, and I agree that what you're doing is fantastic. Focus your research. I love the idea of the research. The hospitals get one singular theme, one topic, one group, work in teams. I know Dr. Mona has written with several of you. That's the way to go. You're only at the start of it now, so use your resources wisely and try and pocket together co-authors, plan your time, and choose your journal wisely so that you actually end up with success. But it is a very time-consuming process. I wouldn't be frustrated with yourselves that it's taking a long time, but I would encourage you, pick your journal first. You can also, another tip from Roger Watson, you can inquire of the editor. You could say to the editor, I've got this paper on advanced evidence-based practice, would you be interested in the journal? And they're getting so fast, because I tell you, my colleague, students doing at the moment, they reject you in about 24 hours. But at least you have an easy rejection, you're not waiting around for ages. So some of the journals, the editor-in-chief will actually give you a bit of advice before you actually go through all the trouble. That makes sense. Thank you so much. Apologies if I'm feeling over time.